They thought I was Ned Beatty from Deliverance. And they asked me to squeal like a pig. I just wish horror films were scary. Like, this isn't a horror film.
It's not scary.
It's not scary at all.
Well, it's very violent.
Yeah.
A zombie movie. It's very.
I would call
it's
it
tense.
I would call it a post-apocalyptic dystopian thriller. It's not a horror film at all. Like, there's nothing.
Well,
scary.
but how do you? But is something only a horror film if it's scary? Because slasher movies aren't scary and they're horror movies.
Well, that's why I call them slasher movies. Right?
They're like horrifically violent. This movie is very violent.
It's violent, yeah.
It's nasty. It has some really intense sequences. And because you're a pig with no emotions, you don't feel as much as other people do. And this movie, I was not scared by this movie, but I know several people who, if they watch this movie, like when the infected are chasing them through the woods and into the house, it's not scary to you because you don't feel anything. And it's not scary to me because I've seen these movies. Like, I felt that sequence was intense, but it didn't scare me.
Right.
But if you're very easily spooked, I think that you would find that really scary.
Yeah, yes. Oh, that's scary right there. That's horrific.
That was
horrible.
So you really wouldn't call this movie horror just because it didn't scare you?
Right.
That's your only metric by which something
Well,
is
what
horror?
other metric
So
do you
there's
have?
like 10 horror movies in the world?
Basically.
You're such a pig!
There's a lot of bad horror movies that are horror movies that aren't scary, and that's bad because to me, a horror movie should be scary.
I don't find the vast majority of horror movies scary, but I find them tense and I find them entertaining, and that's good enough for me.
So that's not really a thing about this film. It's like it's just films in general. I really liked the way they set up the society, right, where they're living on this island, and it makes sense to me because I'm thinking, if you're stuck somewhere and there's
Britain has been quarantined.
Yeah,
Earth
Britain's
Missions,
been
and where
quarantined,
like
like
Swedish and French and like other companies have military-controlled boats that like circle around and kill anyone who tries to escape.
Yeah, so it's a full blockade. So you're stuck there. It makes sense that you're going to find some place that's isolated, that's easily defendable, that can give you some protection. So they find this island, and you can get to it through low tide, and that's smart. And they're basically back to
It's like a primitive way of life.
primitive way of life.
But
they all have these jobs.
They like romanticize that, which I thought was really interesting. We talk about that later, but
Yeah, they do kind of romanticize it, and it's like, I don't think it'd be that romantic. And it's funny because they're all
I think the people themselves romanticize.
Yeah, the kids all go to school, and instead of their schooling and they're like, oh, I'm going to be this, they have set jobs that they're going to be a forager, a farmer, a seamstress, like whatever. So that was interesting. Them going to that first initial time when they go out, that was interesting. But then, but it was a little weird to me because he's a forager, right? Yeah. So he goes out to hunt for things. I think maybe food, like deer and things like that.
They also look for stuff they can use. Yeah.
I don't think that was the intention of this first trip, though. I think he wanted.
The intention of the trip was for his son to kill a zombie,
and he wants
because
to desensitize.
That's the thing. Yeah, he needs to be able to do that in order to perform his job. Yeah.
Yeah. So he takes him out. They perform the kill, and his son kills the first infected that he sees, but it's just a fat slob.
That's the thing. Like, there's two types of zombies now. There's the really fast ones that run all around, right? And there's Samson. We got to talk about alphas. We got to talk about Samson.
There's regular zombies, right? We'll just call them zombies.
I like you looking at the camera, like engaging eye contact.
Well, I'm trying to see that we're getting audio.
Hog's trying to be a superstar.
I'm trying to get audio, make sure the audio's working because we had a little hiccup last time. So
Samson has a big old dong.
Yeah, so that.
You don't want to talk about that?
We'll talk about it. I'm not even there yet. You just jump right to the dong. I'm trying to give my thoughts, and you keep bringing up dongs and farting like an absolute pig. You'd be at home.
You just jump right to the dog.
It's unbelievable. So there's like regular infected, and then there's alphas. The alphas
they're huge. They're like 7 feet tall.
They're strong. They're stronger. They're faster. They're smarter. And this one has a big old dick.
It's like an arm.
And he's running.
It really is.
And it's just flopping everywhere. You've probably seen memes.
Yeah.
I think.
Did you hear he's getting his own movie?
Just because it was deep.
And it's called 28 Inches Later.
That's what I saw that.
Yeah.
My favorite one is, that image of Willem Dafoe kind of looking up and being scared? And this one is a shadow on his face and it's a big dog.
I didn't see that one.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. So
It's massive.
it's a big dong. Good for him. And
Dong da dong dong.
so I think that
Is that what that Cisco song is called? Dong da dong dong dong.
it's about Samson's dong.
The dong song.
That happens. I forgot. I
But
lost
what
my
are we
train
even
of thought.
talking about? You're talking about how he took the kid out to kill the zombies, and there's multiple types of infected now. There's the really fast, normal-sized ones.
Let's check something.
There's
Keep
the
talking.
big, massive alpha ones, and then there's this new species that are like morbidly obese, and they're kind of like white almost, like very, very like alabaster white, like they're coated in powder or something.
Now that we're back, sorry about that. I had a little technical.
We lost audio. I think the
Well, let's
we were talking about the guy's dong.
before we get back to the dong, let's just tell everyone that if they like hearing us talk about dong and pooing on each other, they should subscribe, like, comment.
We're trying to get those follows.
Visit our Patreon.
Hog desperately needs fame
I need the fame.
and wealth.
Daddy needs it too. He's just
I
less
need the
obvious
money
about it.
more than
Well, the money's. Yeah, I don't need the fame.
everyone needs money.
Daddy, tell them the story about how famous you are.
Wow.
Yeah, being recognized in public from my.
I did. I was walking down the street
Yeah.
yesterday, and I heard like a noise behind me, and then someone was like, "Excuse me, are you Will from Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society?"
That's pretty sweet.
It was surreal because that's never happened to me before, other than like at movie screenings of Hong Kong movies, where like you would like obviously people there know like
Yeah.
that world. You know what I mean?
It's only happened to me once, but they thought I was Ned Beatty from Deliverance. And they asked me to squeal like a pig. But I didn't.
You didn't? You didn't give them a little pig squeal?
No, they got to pay me for that. Do it for free.
You can go to conventions, and it's like $50 to hear you squeal, and you'll get on your knees and.
Yeah. Squeal for.
Do it again.
No, that's
Do
a
it
myth.
again.
You got to pay.
Do it again.
Subscribe to our Patreon for more squealing pigs.
Okay,
Anyways.
so
subscribe,
Samson is the alpha
please. Yes.
with a massive dong. Then there's the regular ones, and then there's the morbidly obese ones that like slither on the ground eating like worms.
Yeah, they just
I think
kind
they're,
of
but they're like a different species. I think.
It's really weird because I get there be like a fat guy, but there was 3 or 4 that, and they moved and looked almost.
Well, and then there's the one that shows up in the church later.
yeah,
I think that they're in different species.
yeah, and I don't know exactly how it happens. So, do we want to talk
They are
about?
building this world out over a
Yeah.
trilogy.
Do we want to talk about specific things that I thought were a little weird
If you want to talk,
and
about
that I didn't,
it. I have a lot to talk about too. So
All right, well-
you can go talk about the things you thought were weird.
or I didn't like? So, yeah, I know there's things.
I love.
Imagine there's things I didn't love about it. So,
That's because you're a hog. You're very critical.
spoiler alert.
You don't like to enjoy things.
That's true. Spoiler alert. We later find out in the film that the mom has cancer.
And we also find out that the doctor is not a crazy person. He's actually like a
That
nice, normal.
That seemed kind of like, yeah, that was. I don't think that was a huge twist. It's also like one of these things where the society is almost tell me what you think. The society is almost keeping the youth purposely
ignorant, right?
ignorant
Yeah.
of the outside world because they need them to
Right.
take care of this place, and
Yeah.
all these young people start leaving, they're screwed.
But I also think, I mean, there's so many metaphors.
Yeah.
Like Brexit I think is a huge metaphor in
about
this movie and
that, yeah.
stuff. And like,
But so the scene you're talking about in the church,
yeah.
the kid kind of falls asleep, the mom's asleep, and one of the fat zombies crawls over to the kid. He's about to bite him, and then the mom just rages and destroys him. What is that about? And then they don't really mention it or talk about it.
She kills the zombie.
Yeah, but she did it in a vicious, like powerful way. So here's what I thought was happening in the film. In the beginning, when we first meet the mom and she's in bed and she's not feeling good and she kind of goes into a rage, I thought she had maybe a mild case of the rage virus, but for some reason it didn't mutate
That's the
fully.
plot of the second one.
Okay.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler.
But
There'll be more.
There's a character in the second film who gets infected, but does not become a zombie base.
So I thought that was going on with her, and that's why she kind of flies off the handle. That's why they're trying to keep her calm, and that's how she killed that zombie in a rage. Because cancer doesn't just make you strong like that.
No, I don't. My interpretation of the movie is that she was a kid when the outbreak happened, and that she actually she had to survive, and that she ran away from the infected. She's killed infected before, but because she's so screwed up with the cancer, she just lies in bed moaning all day. But she does have in the film other moments where she's very lucid,
Right.
and I think that
She does, yeah.
in that moment, her instinct to protect her son kicks in, and she's experienced this before, so she almost reverts to this like it's almost like a on an automatic behavior, like muscle memory, and she just destroys the son.
It's just and then they just don't mention it again.
Well, because I mean, we talked about this when we did Adagio too. Sometimes it's subtext, and the things are meant to be implicit, not explicit. But you hate that. Yeah. You want somebody to stand there and monologue to you about like she is able to do this because of
I wanted her to stand there and be like, give me an Arnold line, like, let off some steam, Bennett. She could have been like, eat.
But she does.
So
Remember, there's that scene where she thinks she's talking to her dad,
yeah,
right? Where she's in like one of her kind of like hallucinations, and she thinks the son is her dad, and
Calls him Dad.
but she's talking about when she was a kid before they went to the island. So there is this implied backstory with her of surviving the infected.
Yeah.
And that's how she got to the island.
Well, 28 years later, she's obviously older than 28, so she
I mean, her kid
still
is 12, so they're at least in their 30s.
She still remembers a time before they infected.
But see how old that actress is. And then
Jodie Comer, she's probably about 40, right?
she is 32.
Okay, sorry, Jodie Comer. Look older and sick.
No, she definitely looks older.
She's sick. There's some stuff about the film that it's hard to believe that someone could do some of these things, but it's not a huge deal. So the 100-foot bone statues he builds that don't fall
Explain
over.
the context. Like, no one knows what you're talking about.
There's a statue. It's been
With the Rafe Fines character.
They finally get to Rafe Fines, and the reason that most people think he's crazy and that the kid's dad told him he's a lunatic, they stumbled across him on one of their forages many, many years ago. And they saw him in a field with hundreds of dead bodies, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think you could tell if they were human or infected. I'm guessing they were mostly infected or just got killed by infected.
Yeah.
And he was surrounded by them, covered in blood, basically thrown them in.
But then as we find out,
You find out why he's doing
but
it.
we also find out he covers himself in iodine.
Yeah.
Because that prevents the spread of the infection.
Yeah.
And so he's not actually covered in blood. He's covered in iodine.
Yeah. And so he's burning these bodies, and he looks up and sees this group on a hill, and he's like holding a corpse.
The foragers, right?
And he waves to them, and obviously it's a creepy
He's
visual.
burning the bodies. He's waving to them. Like, they're freaked out by it. Yeah.
But they run off and they never question anything, which is like, come on, there's 9 of you and there's 1 of him. Like, ask him.
3 of them.
I thought there was a big group, wasn't it? Whatever. There's more of them than him.
But I think that that's part of the thematic kind of point of the movie is that he is intelligent, he's scientific, he's compassionate, and they are ignorant and self-mythologizing.
Sure.
Like, for instance, when the kid goes out and he gets his first kill, right? He kills one of the fat ground zombies. They get attacked by the fast zombies the next day. The kid can't hit anything, and the dad kills a bunch of them. They run away. But when they get back to the island, the dad tells everyone, oh, he killed all these zombies, he was good. So there's this whole culture on this island of creating this mythology around themselves, and it's this image of who they kind of conceive of themselves as, and it ties into like images of Britishness and these self-conscious images of like who we are, and we're like I don't think it's a random detail that the first shot we see after we come out of the teaser at the beginning when the people being killed is of the English flag over this island that is completely isolated from everything, right? I think that's a really strong thematic element to this film, and I think it's looking at Brexit and like British isolationism and like, you know, this British notion that like we won World War II and we fought in world, we were like the last, you know, holdout of civilization, and like this image of like masculinity and like warfare and like survivalism and like and again isolationism, to make a point. Like, I think that's a very strong theme to this movie. And like the Swedish guy, there's spoiler alert, we're spoiling the whole movie.
Yeah.
At some point, a Swedish military guy, his boat crashes and he ends up on the
They control boat crashes and they end up on land.
and he's got like a smartphone and a gun and armor, and they're all like, what? They're like he's an alien. But he's, you know, he's from like mainland European, like advanced civilization, and they're like these British island people being like, what is this stuff that you have? And
then
like,
the isolationism does play a big role too, because all these countries, so they contained the rage virus to England, right? and they blockade it so no one can get in and out. And even the Swedish guy says the second you step on the island, that's it. You
never get off.
Right. But the isolationism is a big key to it because not only are they blocked off, but they're purposely blocked off fully because I get it. They don't want to spread the virus, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing preventing them from flying over a plane and dropping supplies or providing help or anything. They don't. Like all these countries just like screw
Well,
it.
that's actually
And that's like a big
You bring up an interesting point because I found a quote from Alex Garland, the writer, where he talks about that.
Yeah, because it'd be easy for mainland Europe to provide medicine, provide tools, provide weapons.
Hey, this is what he says. He says, some of the stuff in the film is about people misremembering the world we had, which I think that ties into the thing of like the notion of like making this mythology and believing that that is true instead of remembering the real history. You could tie that into like the Trump world and people being like, America was better back in whenever, right? But then he said, it's also about the world's capacity to ignore places that are in terrible trouble, which is exactly the point that you're making, right? They could be helping these people.
Could easily.
And they're making absolutely
England's
no
not
attempt at
that
all.
big. They could also eradicate. They could systematically, over 28 years, they could have gone and killed most.
Right, the United States military or the French military.
German.
Whatever. We see the Swedish military, like any of those people could have gone in there and like, but
Drones could have killed. So
is there an element of Britishness that is self-isolating and like, is that part of the
or it's going back through
like this whole
colonial history of England, and they're like, you know what, you deserve it. That could be it too. Like Melanie Room's like, you know what, screw it.
Yeah.
You deserve this. We're not helping you, and so forth. That is a huge part of it. The structure of the film is interesting as well because all the trailers will have you. The trailers do a good job of not spoiling the film, and that's
a very good job. Yeah.
Because what I thought the film was Aaron Taylor Johnson and his kid going out foraging, and it's a story about them. It's not.
That's like the first 20 or 30 minutes, maybe?
Maybe a little before halfway through the film, Aaron Taylor Johnson disappears from the movie.
But worth mentioning, this is part of a trilogy.
Yeah.
The second one is already made, and it's in post-production now, and he's in the second.
Yeah.
So it continues his story. Yeah.
I'm guessing he goes out to find his kid, maybe?
I'm assuming that's what's going to happen in the second.
But yeah, so the second half and the more important half of the film is this kid trying to get his mom to see the doctor to get help. And once he gets to the doctor, it's more about him. It's accepting loss, accepting.
Yeah, so what I thought was so interesting, one of the things I loved about this movie is that I think it was very unpredictable in the structure of it and not really knowing where the story is going, right? Because it essentially at its core, I think this is like a drama about a family. It's a coming-of-age story. And it's a very British movie. And it kind of reminded me of like This Is England and movies like that, more than it reminded me of like the George Romero zombie films, right? I think it's playing with your expectations of the series as well, because in the first movie, they end up going out and going on a journey to find someone who they think can save them, right? And I'm going to spoil the first movie now. I'm sorry if you haven't seen it, but Christopher Eccleston plays that character, right? And he's a very charismatic, famous, charming British actor, much like Rafe Fines. I think Rafe Fines is probably much more famous, but like they're both kind of like these charming, charismatic actors. It turns out that the Christopher Eccleston character is evil, and he wants to do terrible things to these people. And I think that this movie is messing with your expectations because you think the Rafe Fines character is going to be insane or evil or weird or whatever. And he's actually really compassionate. He's really kind. He's really intelligent. He's very rational. And he's surviving in like an intelligent, meaningful way.
Yeah.
He's the opposite in a way of like these people on the island who are like willfully ignorant, who are just like getting drunk all the time, cheating on each other, like infidelity. Like
his dad is kind of a pig.
I thought the dad, okay, I agree with you. We can talk about this if you want, because I thought the dad was, I think in a lesser movie, he would be a less interesting character. But so the dad is cheating on the mom, and the woman who he's having the affair with looks a lot younger. And the dad is like drinking tons of beer and like goes off and like
telling stories.
Yeah.
And also they do this and I've noticed this in a fair bit number of zombie films where, you know, it's like humans were zombies and we have to live. But then you have your humans acting worse than zombies in that case, where they go out to hunt and kill, and he's almost enjoying it. Like he's gotten to the point where not only is he desensitized to the killing, he enjoys the killing. He enjoys the hunt. and he wants
The kid has a hard time though with
kid has a hard time because he still sees these people as people. And it may be due to the fact that A, he's never been out there, but B, he sees his sick mom and then he sees these sick people and he's like equating the two together and he doesn't want to just blatantly go out and kill them.
Yeah.
While his dad has no problem killing them. In fact, there are moments in their opening forge where it feels like he's enjoying himself, where he has no compassion left. He's enjoying himself. He's acting animalistic.
But he does love he loves the deer. That huge, like he likes nature.
He likes,
but he enjoys the killing.
Yeah, he enjoys the
But
killing.
then they go back and he lies about everything that happens, and he's like drinking all this beer.
And at first, I thought it was fine because it's like, okay, his son. I don't think he did bad. He hit. It's hard to hit moving target.
He
was
hit one on
fine.
the leg, and like
But so I was like, at first I was like, all right, he's trying to prop up his kid. He's trying to,
Right.
Encourage him and not say he was scared or whatever. But then as he got more and more drunk and the kid got more uncomfortable, and he's like, stop. And he wouldn't stop it. And he just kept going and get belligerent. I'm like, all right, this is getting.
Because I do think that's that element that ties into this notion of like self-mythologizing, creating a false version of the world and then believing that more than reality. And then you have that group of people who are really deep into this mythology they've created for themselves, and they're believing in a version of the world that does not exist. But the point I was making is that the movie sets you up to believe he's going to be evil, and that the ending is going to be brutal. And then it turns out to be this really beautiful and sad ending about learning the mother has cancer. She's going to die. The kid has to accept that, right? And it's about, and this is something I think is really interesting too. The Rafe Fines character is all about remembering death, remembering beyond death or whatever it was, the memento mori.
Yeah.
Remembering people and honoring them and memorializing them in a meaningful way that is truthful and emotional rather than the mythologizing that is happening on the island. It's another thing that puts him in relief against them, right? He accepts death as part of life. He accepts their condition, the virus, the world that they live in, and he lives within that rather than trying to kind of like pretend that it's not there or that it's something else. And I think that memory, and in particular in relationship to the British Isles, is a major theme in this film, and the way that people either misremember or have their own version of the world that is not real, and that causes them to self-isolate, to be hateful or violent towards certain people and things like that. And something else that's really interesting, if you think about it, in the first movie, the first shot in 28 Days Later is of the monkey watching all of this violence on TV screens. Mm-hmm. And now we live in the era of the smartphone, and everyone is so angry all the time, and the world is so divided and divisive, and everyone's arguing about politics and all of these things constantly. And it's almost like this, there's something very prophetic about that opening image of the monkey sitting there watching all of this violence on these screens, and then it leads to this world of like division and isolation and violence and chaos and stuff.